So today was a really big day. And when I say a really big day, I mean a really big day. And we're going to talk about what happened in Istanbul, which turned out not to be much. We're going to talk about what happened with protests in Ukraine, which turned out to be a lot. And then we'll talk about what's going on in Russia and China and the U.S. as the U.S. is supporting Ukraine now. So let's talk about this. We'll get into it here. So I titled this, or put in the thumbnail, Failed Talks and Successful Protest. I really think that that's what's happened here. So let's talk about the talks first. So Russian-Ukrainian peace talks today lasted only roughly a half hour and will not resume. This is according to TASS. Russian negotiators are reportedly unchanged in their maximalist positions, stating that's what they're all about, and if you want it, take it or leave it. Okay, meanwhile, the head of the Ukrainian delegation, Umarov, the former defense minister, is leading this. He said, "We proposed to the Russian side to hold such a meeting of leaders until the end of August, like a meeting of the principals, like a Zelensky-Putin kind of meeting." Okay. Ukraine keeps insisting on a full and unconditional ceasefire. That's what the United States wanted. That's what the Ukrainians have been saying. The Russians aren't coming around to that, as a necessary basis for effective diplomacy. And then he said, "We are waiting for a ceasefire now and to start a substantive peace negotiations, and it's up to the other side to accept this basic step toward peace. We emphasize that the ceasefire must be genuine. It must include a complete cessation of civilian and critical infrastructure strikes." Right. Okay, I get that. And that's what they've been saying, and they keep saying it, and nothing actually will come of that. So that's where we are. Okay, now a little bit more about this. Negotiations in Istanbul, what's known at the moment. The Ukrainian side proposed holding leaders meeting with the participation of Erdogan and Trump. They could be there with Putin and Zelensky, and that was not well received. The Ukrainians also declared their readiness for a ceasefire. Russia agreed to return of people who have been in captivity for more than 3 years. Okay, so something positive came out of this, not a whole lot. Russia also proposed returning to short humanitarian pauses along the front line, which would allow them to maneuver people into positions, which isn't probably the best idea. And then Russian propaganda spread rumors that the negotiations were held in Russian, which was actually shown to be false by the Center for Counteracting Disinformation. So that's where the negotiations were. Now, the last time that they were in Istanbul, it wasn't a total wash. In fact, that created an exchange of prisoners, a large exchange of prisoners. There's up to 1,000 prisoners. This is today, some prisoners returning home. 1,000 prisoners have been brought home over the course of all stages of Istanbul's agreements. So this Ukraine has carried out the 9th stage of the exchange. And so that's good news, especially for those 1,000. So, okay. So it's not been all bad. Now, let's go to big story number 2. Hands off NABU chants the protesters in Lviv. They're angry and they're determined. So I've got to say, like, the Ukrainians have just been awesome about defending their rights and their liberties. Yulia Servanenko, the prime minister, the new prime minister of Ukraine, had a substantive meeting with the G7 ambassadors focused on one of the most important areas, anti-corruption policy. Ukrainian government is fully committed to zero tolerance for corruption. This principle will be clearly reflected in the government action plan. Said we are sincerely grateful to our G7 partners for their trust, integrity, and their support. Okay, so with that, I talked about this in my last video. Not a lot of you saw it yet. Servant of the people, Zelensky's final gambit. Will this law douse Ukraine's protest inferno? So Zelensky came out and he actually said, I'll tell you what, we're going to put together another law. I'm hearing the protests. We're going to put another law together, and we're going to try to fix what's broken here. Okay, now they broke it, but they're trying to fix it as well. Sergei Sternenko posted this. In the middle of a full-scale war, Ukraine stands strong as a free and democratic nation. I'm proud of our people. Thank you to everyone standing with Ukraine. Huge protest, but it's not throw the bum out. It's not we hate Zelensky. It's nothing like that. It's like we need these anti-corruption bodies to be independent. And they're working on trying to fix what's broken. So Zelensky said, we heard the street, and he promises to restore independence of the NABU and SAPO, NABU and SAPO. They're preparing a draft law. What they're trying to do if I understand it correctly, what Zelensky was trying to do was trying to root out Russian influence in these organizations and root out the people that are like spying for Russia and that sort of thing. But in doing that and moving it over under the president's line of authority, under the president and the chief prosecutor, it was taking away the independence. And so now they have to figure out how to thread this needle. I think they will thread this needle. I was very encouraged today when I heard the news that came out this afternoon. Ukraine's defense intelligence warned, by one more thing. Zelensky announced plans to restore independence of these corruption agencies, but there's a but here, and that is that the legislature just went on vacation immediately after signing this bill. So I think Zelensky's going to call them back. I heard from a reliable person that they're about to call them back. Okay, Ukraine's defense intelligence warned that Moscow could exploit the ongoing protests over Kyiv's controversial new law to discredit Ukraine and undermine foreign aid. I'm sure that that's what Russia is going to want to do. Of course, Zelensky announced he would introduce a new law to improve the Ukraine's anti-graft agencies that he just gutted. There is a problem, though. The Rada went on a month vacation, and the protesters are having none of it. Tomorrow, the Rada, they chant. Okay, yeah. Great. That's right. Now, these are peaceful protesting. They're not like pillaging the streets or destroying things. They just want to protect their rights. And I'm so proud of them. They're doing a really great job defending their rights in Ukraine. Okay, let's turn our attention to, and by the way, I think something will be done here. I think that Zelensky, his statement today was what I was hoping for, and I hope to see it actually turn into something on paper that is going to be satisfactory as far as protecting the independence of the anti-corruption organizations within Ukraine. If that happens, Ukraine is actually stronger for this, and so good on them, good for the protesters for defending their rights. Okay, let's turn our attention to what's going on in Russia. Putin just signed a historical law. Belarusians can now vote in and run for office in Russia and vice versa. So the border blurs, the union tightens, a new chapter begins. I think it's only a matter of time before Belarus becomes an oblast of Russia. Okay, Ministry of Defense has proposed 7.6 salary increase for military personnel starting on October 1st, 2025. It's a notable jump, but it's prompted by a revised inflation forecast for the year. That's bad that it's actually the inflation's still going as it is, where that's going to be a problem. Okay, Russia plans to import 1 million Indian workers as war drains domestic labor pool. Workers will be assigned to maintain essential services. Be very careful. If I were Indian, if you're Indian and you're thinking about this, don't do it. And if they try to get you to sign something, don't sign it, especially if you don't understand Russian, because other people from other countries have been pulled into military service for just doing that. Okay, the new Lada has come out, the new Lada car, and auto reviewers took it apart and discovered that it's packed with foreign components, despite official claims of being 90% local, 90% Russian. Okay. Ironically, many parts come from French manufacturer Renault, which left Russia in 2022, selling its stake in Avtovaz for just 1 ruble. Notably, Russian officials have even suggested labeling Renault's branding as fascist, right? But they're still using their parts. The driver's airbag and infotainment system are made in China. The passenger airbag comes from Japan. Classic Russian style import substitution, swap the logo, pretend it's domestic. So that's what's going on in Russia. Meanwhile, Russian propagandists are saying things like this. While Russian elite continue to dream only of stealing enough to finally get their families and money into the safety of Western civility, Kremlin propaganda pushes lines that could have been lifted right out of the 1950s era of the USSR. This guy here is saying America is a very bad country to live in, very uncomfortable, very poor, destitute, he says. And he goes on and says, a lot of aggression and awful, truly awful police. You don't want to be there because you feel uneasy there. But still, people are drawn to it. They head off to Silicon Valley, and that's blanked up. The whole Silicon Valley is like a bunch of garages behind a train station. There's nothing there. I'm not even sure what to say to this guy here. There are only dreary offices where Google feeds you for free with really bad food. Now, I show what Google actually feeds their employees in class regularly to show you like all the perks and amenities at Google. So that why are they doing this? Because they want their employees there all the time working and thinking about things, have their dry cleaning done for them. And this guy's off in la la land. Um, you wouldn't believe all these highly paid programmers eat so poorly. Actually, I don't believe it. All their happiness is just to drive home in their car and then back to the office with air conditioning. Okay. And there's nothing there. We have tons of everything and we don't know about it. Well, that's some good propaganda there. All right, let's look at China. The U.S. is stepping up its push to cut off a flow of dual-use materials from China to Russia, a vital lifeline fueling Putin's war against Ukraine. The Chinese have been absolutely terrible about this sort of thing. The Chinese have been saying that they're neutral and then acting in a very heavy-handed way, putting their hands on the scales on Russia's behalf because they want Russia to succeed. Here's the U.S. envoy to NATO, Matthew Whitaker, who told Fox that China must be punished for subsidizing Russia's war against Ukraine. And then he also said that he accused Beijing of backing a proxy war. Let's listen to this for just a moment.
China thinks they're fighting a proxy war through Russia, and we're seeing in some statements by the Chinese government that they want to keep the United States and our allies occupied with this war so that we can't focus on our other strategic challenges. And that's just not true. It's not going to happen. China, I think, is miscalculated, but I think they need to be called out for their subsidizing this killing that is happening on the battlefields in Ukraine.
Well, I mean, they are clearly subsidizing. There's no question. Okay, let's turn to the United States and what's going on there. Sersky asked Trump to untie Ukraine's hands, give long-range missiles, and allow strikes inside Russia. In an interview with the Washington Post, Ukraine's top commander said Kyiv is ready to hit targets deep inside Russia if the U.S. lifts restrictions. Sersky called the new air defense system, including Patriot batteries, drone interceptors, critical to defending against aerial attacks. I saw this morning, and then I saw a little bit later in the day, Pentagon approved the sale of Hawk Phase 3 missile systems and sustainment and related equipment for an estimated cost of $172 million for Ukraine. Now, that does not mean that Sersky's comments caused this, but these are related stories and they should go together. Meanwhile, Speaker Mike Johnson says this: I can tell you the appetite here is that we've got to bring accountability to Vladimir Putin and make this war cease. Okay, for those of you who are saying these Republicans, I get it. They were slow. They were way slow in bringing things. They're not there, and they're not in that place anymore. They're now saying they want to get Russia to come to the table, and here's how we're going to, right? We need peace over there in Ukraine. It's gone on too long. Too many innocent people are dying. We don't want further American involvement in this at all. But I do think what NATO is doing and our allies around the world may be effective. So, yeah. And there's not a lot of warmth and fluffiness for Russia from the U.S. Okay, we covered a lot here. And I want you to understand that there's a difference between data, which are just pieces of information, and then information that we kind of understand, and then knowledge, which kind of connects to it. And then insight is where we need to be. We're trying to accomplish that with some wisdom so that we can see what's going on, but we want to avoid this one, and that's conspiracy theory. You don't want to put things together in some way that it's not meant to be put together. And so we're trying our best to make sense of the facts without saying, like, very often I'll say, okay, here's what we know, and this is what we know at this point. I'm not sure I know. Put it in the comments what you know, because we're all kind of growing and trying to learn together. But thanks more than anything for being the kind of person that cares about this, for being the kind of person that's interested. If you're still here, you are a superstar. I'm very glad that people like you exist and want to know and be informed about what's going on. Help me if you have any extra insight, put it in the comments. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.